So the video today is going to be about graphing sines and cosines. So as a warm-up, decide what your answers are to these two questions, and then I'll talk through them. All right, so a function is periodic if the values repeat. So if things just keep going over and over and over again. So you do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. So the next question, assuming we're in radians, what's the period of 2 pi, or of sine of x? The answer is 2 pi, because that's one time around the unit circle. And then you go another time around the unit circle, you're hitting those same values again and again. So I kind of just said this, but why can we use the unit circle to explain why a sine function is periodic? The reasoning is if I start at 0, 0, and then I keep going around the circle, once I hit here again, I'm going to start repeating the values, and then I can keep going around, and I'll keep hitting the same values again and again and again and again, no matter how many times I go around the circle. I'm not getting new values. So you're always going to go between 1 and 2, 1 and negative 1, 1 and negative 1, 1 and negative 1. So some definitions. A periodic function is a function that repeats itself at a regular interval. So it's not like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 over like different amounts of time, but it's just the same thing over and over and over and over again. Amplitude is the maximum height as measured from the center line or the middle. So on this picture here would be the amplitude. So it's not the whole distance from like top to bottom, it's going to be half. So like this is your amplitude, the half chunk, or you can measure it here as the half chunk. Period is the length of one cycle, or how long it takes to get back to your starting point. So here we have this period marked. If I start here and I go back to 0 and then back up to the starting point, that's one period. So you do one cycle or one chunk of what's happening. And then this frequency here is optional, but it's pretty straightforward. It's the reciprocal of your period. So if your period is a half, the frequency is 2. If your period is 4, your frequency is 1/4, but it's just always the reciprocal. All right, so sines and cosines and things to remember about them. So sine, your period is 2 pi standard unless you do some sort of transformation to it, and the amplitude is 1, again, unless you do some sort of transformation. So it can change, but the standard, basic, nothing weird is 2 pi and 1, and the same for cosine. And then how you would graph it, you want to divide your period into 4 equal parts. So if my period is 2 pi, I'm going to divide that into 4 chunks, and then sine starts at 0, it goes up to the peak, back down to 0, down to the minimum, and then back to 0. And the same with cosine, except it starts at your maximum, goes to 0, minimum, 0, maximum. So you always repeat the same process, and you can just keep doing that over and over again. So some examples of how to do this. Here, if we want to figure out what the amplitude is, that's going to be this number in front of the sine. So the amplitude is going to be 3. How you find the period is you want to take the standard period of 2 pi and divide by whatever this k value is right here, your k value. So we would end up getting a period of pi over 2 for this example. And then again, the frequency is optional, but it's just the reciprocal of your period. So you'd get 2 over pi. So then to graph it, draw something like this. You want to start by marking your period. So our period is pi over 2. And then divide it into 4 equal chunks. So for the tests and quizzes and homework, I'm not going to worry too much that your scales are all the same. So like your tick marks don't have to always equal 2 pi. But label the end of your period and then label the other chunks. So half of 2 pi is pi over 4. Half of pi over 4 is going to be pi over 8. And then this would be 3 pi over 8 right there. And then mark what your amplitude is going to be. So you need to get up to 3 and down to negative 3. And now you can actually graph your graph or your sine function. So since it's sine, we want to start at 0. And then at the next tick mark, we need to be up at the maximum. Next tick mark back at 0. Next tick, minimum, and then 0. And again, this is happening if you have like nothing else going on. So we'll talk about later how to do shifts back and forth or up or down or flips. But for now, that's what it's going to look like. So this next example is with a cosine. Here we're going to look at this right here for the amplitude. Your amplitude is always positive no matter what. So even though there's that negative, this negative right here is just going to be a vertical. I'll just dip back in a different pen. A vertical flip. So you never get a negative amplitude. It's kind of having like a negative distance. It's not possible. And then we can figure out what our period is by looking at this 1/2 right here. So you want 2 pi divided by half, which is the same as 2 pi times 2. So you get 4 pi as your period. And then your frequency is 1 over that. And then to graph this, draw your line, mark 4 pi as your period, cut it in half, and cut it in half again, and mark your amplitudes. And then from here, you can graph. So normally cosine would start up here at 1.5, but we have a vertical flip. So I'm going to start down here at negative 1.5, go to 0, maximum, 0, minimum. And this will be your graph, like that. So that's it for the notes today. Check on Schoology for your homework and the optional homework and all that kind of stuff.